All right, I'm on time today.
Finally. Whew. Sitting there eating Kit Kats like a fat turd.
I have to say,
Halloween, man. It's just, I don't have kids, but I know people that have kids. So my wife goes over to these people's house. She visits. She comes home with a bag of candy that big because they don't want the candy in the house for their freaking kids. So what am I going to do with it? I'm going to eat it all and then just probably die of sugar. But until I die, the promo I forgot to mention this off air. Did you see our guy, Cade George?
yes,
So Nebraska, not only Nebraska, but North Carolina and Maryland have all now reached out to him and asked him to take visits. And one of those schools is close to offering.
yep,
That's crazy good because this kid was not on the radar.
yep.
He didn't have any stars. Um, and it just so happened the interest started to come after, I did 3 videos on him in a row last week. And it's not all because of this. It's hard work. It's doing your own networking. It's reaching out to schools. You can't just sit there and let us do a video and hope, all of a sudden Nick Saban calls. But
Right.
with his work and his dad's work, and our work, I mean, we're talking Power 5. And I thought it was so late in the game that we were going to talk maybe FCS and then potentially, if you wanted to play at a higher level, go FCS to the portal. We're talking now. I'm not saying that any of these schools are going to offer him. I'm not saying that this is, a situation, but the fact that he's getting invited on these visits is a huge, huge deal. And honestly, we've had some success stories, but this is fast. This is really fast. So if he does end up getting one of these Power 5 offers, or if he lands it even at a Group of 5 or FCS with a scholarship, this is going to be one of the ones that I'm putting out there as he just signed up for the 6-month program a month ago or a month and a half ago.
Yep.
So that's really fast.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that with a few of the guys now, in different capacities, but absolutely, which also makes me think that there's another thing associated with almost like a blitzkrieg approach could also a short-term blitzkrieg approach, and then going back to the month is also something I think, especially during certain time periods. So, like right now, the college coaches are all going. I think November is when they can all go out up until Thanksgiving, if I'm not mistaken. They could all get out on the road here, and then Thanksgiving they're kind of locked back out, and I think then they can come back out again, right? So
yeah, December 1st is the spot for head coaches doing in-home visits with 2023s. But the assistant coaches, they'll be on the road after December 1st like crazy. The ones in the conference championships will have to juggle that. But recruiting is really going to take a turn here in 3 weeks, and it's going to get crazy. And then you got that 3-week ramp up to the early signing period. So those 3 weeks are going to be crazy. And to speak of your blitzkrieg, I don't count this as 3. It's just I got so much video from him.
right.
I had my guy cut up 3 minutes, separate minutes, and this shows this, and this shows this, and this shows this. But I wanted an array of all of it in case a coach just hit a minute. I wanted him to see strength, technique, motor, all that stuff in all 3 of them. So that counts as 1 for me because I'm not really even counting.
Right.
I am. We're not going to give 20 on a 6-time promo, but we're also not going to limit it to 6. I just did 3 in one day, so now you got 1 left. No, it was just. I had enough video. I decided to hammer it out there. And I just know how this works. I know how this works. They all talk to each other. There's somebody on the Nebraska staff who's good friends with somebody at Maryland who coach together. Everybody, this is just everybody's
Right.
coach with everybody. Everybody knows everybody. You run into, oh my God, Coach such and such. You were at Maryland 15 years ago, and now you're at Nebraska. You still know people back there, blah, blah, blah. Everybody talks. Once you get that first interest, it's going to start to snowball. I just expected this to be more a Group of 5 interest to snowball because we were talking the week before about, Georgia Southern, Georgia State. So for Nebraska, Maryland, North Carolina to come in, that's pretty big stuff.
And linemen, and this goes out to anyone watching this, linemen, it's difficult for college coaches to find really good linemen. The interior side on the defensive line side, and obviously on the offensive line side. So it's very difficult to find really good ones. So the help along the way with it, helping them in their evaluation process by pointing out some, guys that are on our promo, pointing out what they're doing, that is kind of a big deal. And it does make a difference because you're pointing out some things that they need to look at. And if they have a weakness in that area, or for some reason they didn't get some of the guys they wanted, right? There's opportunity because that's what's going to happen now. Because as you see some of these players either commit to go somewhere or eventually sign, early sign, all that stuff, you'll see some jostling that's going to happen over the next few months. Because some guys are going to not get guys that they think they're going to get. And some guys are going to realize, oh, man, we have a deficit here for our next class. And a lot of those COVID players, too, are going to be are going to be gone, right? So those players that took the extra years of COVID over the last year and this year, those guys will pretty much be almost out of the system, too, right? I'm assuming. So
it's murky there because but the super seniors, the 7th year seniors who got the extra year with a red shirt and an extra year with COVID, those guys are almost done. We're gonna have a few of them next season, but that'll be it. So I mean, obviously 2020 season. So now you got 2021, you got 2022. So even if you're a freshman, you get that free year. There's still going to be a bunch of guys that get that extra year of eligibility. But the one thing I noticed in the portal is when a big man goes in the portal, offensive lineman or defensive tackle, they get a lot more attention than anybody initially because, as you mentioned, it's hard to find big guys. It just is. And, I don't know why that is. I mean, there's as many big guys. I mean, obviously there's more skilled guys, and you evaluate more skilled guys with 7-on-7, and you evaluate them for a longer time through the summer, whereas the big guys have the big lineman camps. But for some reason, there's a big flame out quota with big men when it comes to high school football recruiting. So now I know a ton of schools that are looking JUCOs to fill their offensive and defensive tackle needs, and a bunch that are going to be looking in the portal this year too. There's still a snafu in the portal also that I think affects everybody. They have to change the language. They put out the language last week that said 4-year eligible transfers, so not grad students, can't count towards your 85-year scholarship moving forward, which means that everybody who's in the portal now and everybody entering in the next, that'll enter in December, they can't go anywhere. It's a typical NCAA mistake, and everybody's panicking about it. Once they fix that, though, it's the next step towards unlimited transfers and all the other stuff we're talking about in free agency. So, a kid like that, or somebody like Hartman, our guy who moved from Texas to Oregon, they can go FCS, then they could transfer up, to Group of 5, then they could transfer again up to Power 5. They'll have unlimited ability to do that too. So, the key is to get to playing college football. And that's what I talk to all these 2023s about, that it's November. You got probably 2 games in your entire high school career left. There's still time for us to help you, but it's got to be that blitzkrieg type of effort, like with Zaire that we're doing.
Right.
But if you find a home, then it's up to you. Then you can make your way at an FCS school and move up, even Division II. I mean, we see some guys on Power 5 rosters that are Division II football players. But you got to find that home. And without help, you're not going to find that home. It does not happen randomly. I was talking to a kid the other day. He was all excited about the promotion. He's a 2024. He plays quarterback, he plays wide receiver. He's got more wide receiver film, but he wants to be recruited as an athlete if possible. And then we got to the portion of, this isn't free. And that when they get to the portion of this isn't free, that's when a lot of them shut down. And they're like, oh. And I explained to him, I said, listen, you can avoid this program and hope and pray that somebody notices you, and you could tweet to your heart's delight to your, 120 followers, most of them your, grandparents and family members. And you could pray for that offer or that opportunity or that visit or that summer camp offer or that camp offer. Or you can invest and make sure it happens. But that's what they get caught up in, man. They think it's free, and they're hoping against hope that they can get the attention by themselves. Just doesn't work.
And it's important, and I want to bring this up for the guys that are doing our stuff. You can't just, what you said was critical. They can't just sit there and say, "Oh, we have Coach Schumann and Mike Farrell doing our promos. I'll just sit there and wait." As we do the promos, you've got to then follow up. That's an important aspect, right? Begin to follow up and reach out to some of the schools that you've been talking to, or the ones that you aspire to. Because if you just sit there and wait for each promo, that's also that's to me not enough, right? It's got to be an active participant. And now the promo takes off. Send these promos out to the coaches so they can watch what we say about you, and look at it and look how we analyze the actual process. You know what I mean? So
it's interesting because what you say, is hard work. And you see these kids, they send us film all the time, how hard they're working on a daily basis. They're up before dark in the gym. They're out doing sprints in the snow, whatever. They're working their butts off. But then they won't do the work or make the investment into helping all that hard work. Like, you work hard at anything, you're going to be successful at it if you're any good. We didn't get to where we are. And listen, we're not famous or anything like that. We're just, kind of known. But it didn't just happen. How many freaking camps did you run? At one point, you were running like 50. And 100. You were on the road every weekend.
I was up to 150 at one point.
Yeah, and that's insane. I remember traveling a couple times, during the peak travel time.
During those big years?
Like 44 out of 52 weeks.
Yeah.
It's just endless. I would get home on a Sunday night, and I'd be off on the road on Wednesday night, because I go to a Thursday game, a Friday game, a Saturday game, and they get home on Sunday. And it can wear you down. But if you have a goal in mind and you want to be great at something, then you continue to do it, and you don't let anybody say no. But, you need some help along the way. If I wasn't discovered by some people early in my career, I would have never got to where I was. Now, I took that opportunity, and I went to ESPN, and I went this, and this, and I ran with it. My hunger actually increased after I got the opportunity. And that's kind of what has to happen here. So what I like about, Cade George and his dad's approach as an example of our program, they're not just waiting for our videos.
Right.
They asked for feedback. I gave them feedback. We did the videos, but they've been, beating the drum for this kid and hitting up every coach. And the combination is an extremely subtle, nuanced success. You hit up coaches and nobody's heard of you, they're going to ignore you. You hit up coaches and maybe the white rhino or the name sticks in their head from a video that they saw on our timeline. Then they're going to be like, who the hell is this? How do I know this name? And it doesn't have to be a great nickname like White Rhino or whatever. Oh, and then 2 and 2 together, then all of a sudden you got their attention and their interest. One isn't going to do it. We could probably get you attention, but if you're not responsive or interested, it's not going to help you. And you could try to get attention at schools, but without, a little bit of a nudge, they're not going to do anything for you. So anyways, it's starting to come together for some of these kids to beyond my expectations, to be honest with you. Like, I see some of these kids and I'm convinced, they're Power 5. But then I look at it and I'm like, nobody else agrees with me on this. I think Kluver's Power 5 quarterback.
Yeah.
I think he has the skills, the size, the arm, the mobility, all the intangibles. But, he's 2 years too late. And quarterbacks are hard, to get that attention when it's too late. But then some, I'm just like, okay, I'm just trying to get this kid an FCS or a group of 5 interest. And then it goes beyond that to a higher level of interest. And it's just kind of cool.
It's very cool. Check out myfootballcamps.com. D1. Okay, you'll have both me and Mike Farrell working with you directly to develop these promos for you based off of your film, based off the stuff that you send over to us, and it's really cool stuff. It's been really helping a lot of the guys we work with, and there's quite a few of them now. Get in there, get on board, and if you're interested or you have a question, reach out to us, and we'll get that process rolling for you. All right, Coach Mike.
Yeah, I'm not a coach. You know what's funny I find about people?
But
So I just got a DM. I had made a prediction earlier this season that Mike Norvell wasn't going to win 6 games at Florida State. I looked at the schedule and I couldn't find 6 wins on the schedule. And, preseason predictions are always hit or miss. I don't think anybody really expected Miami to be as bad as they are. And I don't think anybody expected Kansas, as example, just won their 6th game and is going to a bowl game to be as good as they've been this season. You just don't know. But you make predictions as part of your job. So in the ACC, I was looking at their schedule, and I'm like, man, this team, I'm not sure if they have, the offense, the firepower, and I wasn't sold on their quarterback. And I'm looking at the schedule, and I'm like, okay, they could beat Duquesne, but they're going to lose to LSU. Well, they end up beating LSU. And then I'm like, okay, let me give them losses to NC State, who's going to be good, and Wake Forest, who's supposed to be good, and Clemson's certainly going to be a loss. But they'll probably lose to Miami because Miami finished 5-2 in their last 7 games last season. They had Tyler Van Dyke back, and a lot of people expected them to be maybe an 8 or 9 win team. And I expected maybe a loss to BC. BC's historically bad. So you just don't know. So he got his 6th win. So now I got people on my timeline. Old Takes Exposed or whatever it's called, Freezing Cold Takes. Have you ever heard of that account?
Yeah.
Hilarious. I know the guy. He's a Florida grad, and he put out my tweet saying Norvell wouldn't get the 6, and now it's blowing up. It's got 1 billion likes, and everybody's commenting, calling me an idiot, this, that, and the other. But what strikes me as funny is people actually will go into your direct messages. And someone told me the other day I was the stupidest human being to ever live. I'm just curious how much of a loser you have to be and how little you have to have in your life to actually dive into someone's DMs and say that when you could just say it on Twitter. So yeah. I just got one now. Hey, Mike, Norvell got your 6 wins. Laughy, laughy, laughy emoji from some dude named Steve Ryland, who is an educated man. He's the director of physical occupational therapy at First Choice Medical Group. This guy's a very successful human being, right? What makes him such a loser that he has to jump in my DMs and tell me that? Explain to me, Dave. Explain that to me.
I can't, because they just want to make your day worse. That's why.
Why? My day is bad already. I mean, Twitter, my timeline is all, you suck because you thought the Vols were good. You suck because Florida State won 6. You suck because you thought TCU would be 500. Everything is you suck on my timeline. You could just jump in there and tell me I suck. But to DM me is just a little bit of an extra step of loserdom that you have to do that to somebody, I think. I don't know.
These people get I'm assuming he's a Florida State guy.
Oh, yeah. Well, what I do is I screen grab them and I put it out there. But if they threaten me, I've been threatened. If they threaten me, I'm going to kick your ass, I'm going to kill you or whatever. I'll find their profile. I won't I'll go to Twitter to have them shut down, but I'll go to LinkedIn. I'll find you. I'll contact your boss. And I will send him a screen grab of your threat to me physically, and I will get you fired. Now this guy didn't threaten me physically or anything, so I don't care. He's just laughing at a bad prediction, and I think he's a loser for doing it. But if this said, hey, Mike, go kill yourself, I would contact First Choice Medical Group, and I'd get him fired. There's no upside to it is what I'm saying. I was watching First Take. You ever watch First Take?
Yeah, I used to. Not
with
really.
Stephen A. Smith, right? So they have this segment every Monday with Ryan Clark and Michael Irvin, and it's talk about the biggest performances. And these two, they go, it's all showmanship. They go crazy on camera, and they start like hyping each other up, and it's like the most ridiculous television I've ever seen in my life, like to a stupid level. And so I was taking a video of it on my TV, and I was going to tweet it out and say, what the hell am I missing? Why am I watching this? Because it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And then I thought about it, and I said, what's the upside to that? What's the point? I mean, a couple people might agree with me. A couple people might call him stupid as well. Ryan Clark follows me. I don't need him in my DMs telling me I'm an idiot. So I get the notion of it, but there's a stop level in your brain that makes you stop.
Right.
And I think some people don't have it.
No, it's called the edit mode.
The people don't have it. It's hilarious. But anyways, that just happened. It's just like, it's a phenomenon to me. I just can't understand. Listen, I love the attention. This Old Takes Exposed, I've gotten probably 500 new followers for being wrong about Mike Norvell. It helps my business. It helps my analytics on my website. It helps to be wrong.
Right.
But I just don't get the extra step of actually, like, what's the best outcome he can think of? Me saying, yeah, you got me.
The only analogy I could use is, so every once in a while I'll get emails, they didn't like the camp, or, they run, or they didn't like who I chose as MVP, or, what. And nowadays it's not even me at all the camps, but like, whoever we had choose them, whatever. And they'll write something really nasty, like even curse at you. Okay. I just think, what is the point of that? If your kid was getting recruited, if I actually forwarded what you just sent me, and I don't, most of the time out to a coach, let's say you were getting recruited. Most of the time they're mad at me because their kid isn't that good. So they're just mad at the world for that. But so they just take it out on me. But if I actually was send it to, I don't know, let's say you were getting recruited, and the coaches, they may not pull your offer, but they're definitely going to hesitate to be like, what kind of brain power is going into all this from these people? And that has happened in multiple different instances. Like, I just think, what are these people thinking? Like, what is the good that's going to come from insulting someone that actually, if they really wanted to forward it to someone that could actually have an impact on the decision, and many years ago, actually, I'll tell you the truth, they did this. So I don't remember who the player was and who the person was. It was like 2000. It was early in my career when I would get mad when they were mad. But I would say like maybe 7 or 8 or something like that. And a parent was like literally harassing my staff. And then I would get it forwarded to me. We would try to respond peacefully, and they would just keep harassing. So I said, well, you're going to go on the do not recruit blacklist. I said, and they said, well, whatever, So I put them on this list. And when I said that, I said, if you recruit this kid is going to be a headache for you. And so that's the level that someone could go to. Now, this was when I was young and fiery. I wouldn't even waste my time with it now, because it would just be a waste of your time. But like, those are things you don't want. Just like you don't want to, just like you don't want to annoy your high school coach to death, right? Because he's actually going to tell the college coach if you're a good guy or not. Like, why would you want to piss him off? Even if you don't like him, don't piss him off. He's going to be like, yeah, that kid's a good guy. Or the last thing you want him to say is, oh, I don't like that kid's a headache. Like, how do people not understand that? I don't know how they don't understand those things, but
people crop up, additional Twitter handles with no followers, just to tell you stuff. I mean, you gotta get a girlfriend or something, man. Like, get a family, get a life, get something. And I think it annoys me to the level of, this person really needs something. Not that I care. I mean, I don't care if they have anything in their life, but really needs something else to focus on. I can't be it. I can't be 2 minutes out of your day diving into my DMs to tell me I'm an idiot. I just can't.
They're happy because you're talking about it now. That's what they wanted.
I guess. But why does that make them happy?
Because they're unhappy.
But how does that make them happy? Me talking about what a moron this guy is makes them happy?
Well, they're happy because they're not happy. They wanted
negative attention. This is like a child getting in trouble so that his parents pay attention to him.
Right. Or they're unhappy at that moment about and they want to stick it to you for being wrong. So they figure, hey, you know what? You made me a little bit unhappy. I'm going to make him unhappy. But I think your analogy of the kid, right? That's a good analogy. You know, you didn't give me candy. So now, because you didn't give me candy, I'm going to give my son will do stuff like this. You know, I'm going to be a headache for the next 25 minutes.
Yeah, but he's 7.
I know.
You know, I get it. This dude ain't 7, but it's funny. Well, listen, I'm glad I was wrong because you know what? If I'm right, if Norvell didn't win 6 games, he gets fired. No one pays attention to my prediction whatsoever. And I get nothing. Being wrong, now I've got 1 billion retweets, and I got more people following me than ever. So I should just try to be wrong. The problem is you can't try to be wrong, because it's all prediction. It's all guesswork. You know, I could predict Nick Saban loses 2 games this season and he goes undefeated and I look like an idiot and that's great. Or I could be right and then segue into what we're going to talk about. Or I could be right and nobody pays attention, nobody cares because you don't get credit for being right. What you do is you get attention for being wrong. So I guess maybe in a little pseudo world, I'm like the 7-year-old kid. The more stuff I put out there that's wrong, the better off I'm going to be.
Well, I'll give you an interesting thing. I don't know if you ever pay attention to any of these, a lot of these well, you know who Tony Robbins is, right? So Tony Robbins is always saying in all his promo things when he does his financial stuff, side stuff, the market's going to crash. He always, when it's good, whether it's bad, they always say it's going to, the market's going to pop, right? No matter when it is, because guess what they're eventually going to be? Correct.
Right. Yeah.
They're always going to be correct at some point. And as soon as they're correct, that clip that they made 5 years ago, now they are a forecaster.
So what I can do is I can predict Mike Norvell's going to get fired.
Yes, which he will at some point.
But don't be specific. Don't say this season. Don't say 6 games. Don't say Mike Norvell's going to get fired. Tweet. And then, a year from now, 3 years from now, 6 years from now, when he gets fired, I could put it out there like I was a genius.
Or you could do this one, too. Eventually, Nick Saban's going to get tired of all the nonsense. He's just going to retire. No. Oh, you're definitely going to be right at some point.
Genius. Jesus. Well, he might die in office. You just don't know with that guy. But I get it. It's fascinating to me that, and this is the other thing, too. I wrote an article about how Clemson and LSU and Notre Dame fans are both as happy as can be this weekend. Marcus Freeman beat Clemson. They're 6-3. The ship has turned. Brian Kelly brought in the Yankee down south, and he beat evil Nick Saban. Now, at certain times this season, after they lost to Florida State, after they lost to Tennessee, LSU fans wanted Brian Kelly fired. And he was a horrible fit, and he's not one of us, blah, blah, blah. And after losing to Marshall at home and losing to Stanford at home, Marcus Freeman was over his head and a horrible hire. And that's how we react on a week-to-week basis. I could do coaching rankings every week and change them. That doesn't mean that, Dabo lost this week. He's still the best coach in the ACC, period. Hands down, not even close. But I could put out a coach's ranking right now and potentially, if I wanted to, put, Mike Norvell at number 1 because he just beat Miami 45-3. It's idiotic. He's not a better coach than Dabo, but people would consume that, and there would be half the people would believe that because half the people are just complete morons. So we react in such a week-to-week basis. Tennessee was all the rage last week, right? Now they suck. They shouldn't even be included in the college playoffs. They were exposed as who they are. They lost to a really good football team on the road. They should honestly be number 2 in the country because their resume is much better than Ohio State, who just struggled with Northwestern, much better than Michigan, whose best win is Penn State and their next best win is Maryland, and who just struggled with Rutgers. I know the score doesn't indicate it, but they did.
So the first half was they were losing to Rutgers.
Yeah, but Tennessee loses to Georgia. Let's drop them back behind Ohio State and Michigan, who both, by the way, The combined records of their opponents this year are both under 500. Michigan's combined records, heading into last week was 30-36, and they just beat Rutgers, who's 4-5 now. So it's 34-41. I mean, they've beaten nobody. They beat one good team. And Ohio State the same. I mean, Northwestern's now 1-8. That's going to hurt their record, So it's just we react too quickly, but that's what you have to do in this world. You have to. I have to say Mario Cristobal is a failure at Miami. I have to. Because if I write that this Miami team was an absolute mess and recruiting didn't happen there under Manny Diaz and prior to that, and they have no infrastructure whatsoever, and all the nightmare that Mario Cristobal ran into, people will come back at me, and rightfully so, say, well, how did they win 5 of 7 last year at the end of the season? How is this team trending up? How did they go from first-round Tyler Van Dyke to now undrafted free agent Tyler Van Dyke, who sucks? It's all Cristobal's fault. He's a failure. He's overrated, blah, blah, blah. You can't defend somebody, but you also can't overpraise somebody either. If I go out there and say Kirby's going to win a second national championship, which I think he will, then there's going to be those idiots out there that say, well, they beat nobody. Tennessee's overrated. Their other wins against Oregon. Oregon's good, but the Pac-12 sucks. There's always some moron out there, or a gaggle of morons, like a lot of them, who will gang up on you and shout you down. And that's why social media is such a cesspool. You're giving opinions to the dumbest human beings on earth. And I won't even get into politics. Politics is much worse.
Oh, politics is a whole different level.
People are idiots. They don't know. They don't know anything about anything. Most of the people are idiots. 99% of the world are idiots. I'm an idiot. I just happen to be specialized in one certain field. And I'm an idiot in that.
I would rephrase that to say most people know the world within their spectrum. And then when it's outside, which I would say most people, politics is definitely, or in our case, like football analysis is probably, even though they watch football, is mostly out of people's general spectrum, right? And by the way, football is going to be more in their spectrum than politics.
Well, you're also nicer than I am. I just call 99% of the world idiots.
Yeah. Well,
nice.
You know what? I think that I don't look at it that way. I think that most people are average. Okay. And there's 20% and 1%. So 20% above that average level that are above average. And then you have that 1% that are elite, which as far as maybe thinkers go, which would be very difficult to get into. And then at the bottom of the spectrum, you have average all the way down, and you probably have 20 and 1%, 20% that are below average, and 1% that are really in trouble. Really in trouble.
That's higher than 1%. Man. I'm telling you, it's got to be higher than 1% are really in trouble. I mean, I can't imagine.
Well, maybe 20%, the lower 20% are in trouble. It's just that 1% are probably in jail, or walking around the streets not knowing what's going on.
Yeah,
which is sad in a different way. But
the older I get, the more stupid I think the world is. Maybe that's just being.
My father has started to adopt some of that. He was a coach and an optimist for forever. So maybe there was something to what you're saying, because I
think we're getting dumber as a society. But I will tell you this:
I agree with that.
Alabama has a lot of warts this season. So normally when Nick Saban loses a national championship, as he did in the title game last year to Georgia, he comes back and wins one. That's kind of the MO, or at the very least gets to the playoff. But they've now been eliminated from the playoff. I mean, there's no way you're going to get a 2-loss Alabama team in, even if their losses are the 2 top 10 teams. If the committee somehow, and let's say a lot of things could happen with these rankings, I mean, you could have a 1-loss Clemson team, 1-loss, let's say TCU loses, USC or Oregon, one of those two could be a 1-loss team. If you nudge an Alabama team, and they're number 10 in the AP, which is still amazing, it would be a riot. People would riot. So they're out of the playoff this season. And what I keep seeing from them is a lack of skill. The receivers don't scare me. Bryce Young is great. He had an off game. Jahmyr Gibbs is great, but I don't see a dominant offensive line. I don't see great wide receivers. I don't see a fear factor where Alabama could put 21 up on you in a minute. And the defense is very pedestrian, especially in the secondary, which is extra concerning to me because that's his specialty. And the penalties, man, it's just constant, stupid penalties. I think this team is one of the worst he's had in a very long time. And I keep thinking that this has got to be the beginning of the downfall of the dynasty, right? I mean, 9 penalties. I think they had double digits against Texas, double digits against Tennessee. This is just a sloppy football team.
Well, I think that like a lot of the recruits that were big, like their tight end, for example, what's his name?
Latu.
They raved about him early on. He's not that fast. He's okay. Like compare him to Mason Taylor, who's only 18. Okay. And how Mason Taylor makes plays. Latu does not make plays.
Yeah, or compare him to what's his face? OJ Howard.
OJ Howard in the past.
The dude with the Vikings, I forget his name. Some of the tight ends they've had in the past, yeah.
Yeah, he just doesn't make plays, and I'm going to go to this too. I think that they lack some level of big speed, other than Gibbs. Gibbs obviously has big speed, but other than Gibbs, they lack big speed, and I think the line is, dare I say, okay on the offensive line. So, I mean, it looked to me that LSU traditionally is always, even when they're not that great, they got guys that could get to you at could get to the quarterback. But it looked like they had a clear path many times, right, to just disrupt everything with Bryce Young. And whenever they really needed it, like they needed to dial it up and cause havoc, they seem to be able to do it. Even though just giving up points because they have enough guys that can make plays. That they're obviously loaded with 5 stars, but it didn't seem like they had guys other than Gibbs that could just get to the end zone now. Like that's what you're become accustomed to. Like guys getting to the end zone now from Alabama, and I just didn't see it. LSU looked like Daniels is. I mean, what he did in that last run, the way that the guys were blocking. Let's people forget not only was Daniels' run, it was a nice run. He outran everybody to score, and then they got the 2-point conversion. But what was amazing about it was there was like 3 pancakes on that play. I mean, in overtime, when you needed something to happen, the wide receiver on the top right side took his guy, his cornerback, into the sidelines. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Into the sidelines. He was off the field. I mean, completely off the field. Mason Taylor blocked his guy and was smart enough not to continue to block as Daniels comes run by, so he didn't get a penalty. And then the other, I don't know who it was, but made the block on the front side for him. So it was just great blocking beyond the fact of everything else. Are we used to seeing Alabama guys that can't get off blocks?
No, we're not. And we're also used to seeing better coaching. I mean, usually the 4- and 5-star kids get coached up to that level, and I'm looking at their wide receiver group, and there's no 5 stars here, but, Ja'Cory Brooks was a 4-star kid. Some had him as a 5, but I never did. Jermaine Burton was a 4-star. He's transferring from Georgia. Kobe Prentice, Trayshawn Holden, Isaiah Bond, JoJo Earl. A lot of these guys were 4-star kids, and they're not playing at that level at all. Their biggest threat at receivers, Ja'Cory Brooks. He doesn't scare anybody. He's not fast. You look at the offensive line, and the development of those guys. Most of those guys were 4 stars. There's some 5 stars on there, not playing well. I think it speaks to the coaching. Bill O'Brien, I was defending him a little bit heading into this game because his team was averaging 41 points a game. If you can't win averaging 41 points a game, then you don't deserve to win. And they had won all but one game when they got in the shootout with Tennessee and gave up 52. but they put up 49 points. It wasn't the offense's fault. They lost to Tennessee. But this game, the play calling stunk. The offensive player development looks bad. And the defense doesn't scare me at all. As you mentioned, just players not doing Alabama type of things. Even Will Anderson, who's like Superman, who should have been in New York last year instead of Aiden Hutchinson with his statistics, is having a very average year for what we expect of Will Anderson. I mean, he's got 38 tackles, 7 sacks, and an interception. That's good, but it's not like what we expected from him. And I think offensively, when you got Golding on defense, I think it's finally caught up to Nick Saban and losing over and over again coordinators, losing Kiffin and then losing Sarkisian, and settling on Bill O'Brien. And on the defensive side, Kirby Smart, they still haven't replaced him as a defensive coach. They haven't upgraded or even come close to what he was there. And it's catching up to him. So I think it's good. I think it's good that Alabama is not going to be in the playoff for the first time since the playoff existed. I think it's good for college football. Clemson's not going to be in there. It's the first time since 2014 when the playoff started that neither Alabama or Clemson will be in there. You've got teams that won multiple national titles. And now it's time for new teams to take their turn. And it's good. The intriguing part about talking about Alabama and Clemson is when Nick Saban does step down, as we mentioned, that infamous tweet we can all put out saying he's going to get tired of it eventually. Will Dabo take over? And I don't think he will. But Clemson is no longer a team that's a threat to the playoff anymore either. They lost 3 last year. This year, the schedule was set up to easily run the table. Not a hard schedule at all. And they lost to Notre Dame badly. And he won't replace his quarterback, who is not good. DJ, Uyunglele. But there's other issues too. The offensive line is actually playing better than Clemson offensive line usually plays. The run game is okay, but they don't have any superstar receivers either. You're not seeing, the T. Higgins of the world out there. You're not seeing Rodgers. You're not seeing, you go way back to Nuke and Sammy Watkins. They're just not there. And defensively, they're solid. Their front's solid, but their secondary is not that great. And honestly, that front has been banged up this year, where they're just not playing on the same page. So I think Clemson, in the ACC, you have to run the table. You have to win every game and go to the playoff. And I don't see Clemson as an undefeated football program. Also, the guy doesn't like to use the transfer portal.
That's going to be an issue.
You better start using the transfer portal. Because when you have depth issues, you can't say, he says, famous quote, the locker room is my transfer portal. Okay, great. Well, you've had guys poach from your team. Darian Kendrick is an example of it, who played for Georgia last year and helped lead them to a national championship. You've had guys poached. You haven't brought in, and it's hurt your depth and your ability to make plays. And Clemson would be an extremely attractive place in the portal. A lot of kids would want to go there. But Dabo's stubborn. So I think we got ourselves an issue here with 2 programs that have been the staple of our playoff world falling apart.
Well, Clemson has 1 loss. I would attribute, now I haven't watched Clemson as in depth, but I have watched enough to know his loyalty at the quarterback position to Ugalele is to a fault at this point. Like, there's a point where I thought, like, the last game when he came out and said that, I was like, okay, I respect Dabo Swinney as far as respect as a person. There's definitely the guy you could see would go to the wall with you. But now it gets to a point where now do the other players, obviously they notice the same thing. They probably like him as a person, Ugalele. He's probably a popular kid, as most quarterbacks are, right? But you have to say to yourself, like, when do we make the move here? Are we sacrificing? Are we sacrificing the season? And if we are, if anyone can quote unquote let Ugalele ride out through the season and get away with it, I mean, he's built so much capital, that he could. But is it worth it? That's the question. Is it worth it?
And the kid's a junior, so you got a freshman in Cade Klubnik, who was the guy who started ahead of Kruger 2 years in high school. who came in Syracuse game and completed 2 of 4, wasn't the difference maker, but gave a spark to the team. So then you got this game against Notre Dame, and you're down at the half. I'm trying to see what the score is at halftime. It was 14-0 at the half, and then 38 seconds left, and they ran Uiagalelei out there, just to sort of conservatively sit on the ball. Second half, man, that's when you bring in Klubnik. You have to change it at that point, but he didn't. Then you go down 21-0, and he didn't. Then you go down 28-0, and then it's too late. I'm sorry, you're just not the team you used to be with the dynamic playmakers, and the freaking, Etienne's and Trevor Lawrence's of the world, where you can come back from 28-0 on the road in the fourth quarter. And then he finally made the move, and it was too late. And I think the loyalty is an issue, as you mentioned. I mean, the kid's a junior. You've been loyal to him since the beginning. He led you to 3 losses last year, and now your only chance of winning this season was to go undefeated. You had to get past Notre Dame, but that's not impossible. Notre Dame lost at home to Marshall and Stanford, so they're gettable. And then after that, it's cakewalk city, man. I mean, I think you got Miami, South Carolina. I mean, you're going to win those football games, Louisville, and then you're in the playoff. But you blew it. Dabo blew it.
And you know what? I actually think, in the sense with Uiagalelei, because he's not doing well, if he goes and transfers somewhere else that maybe they run something that fits more his skill set, he may be better off. It's not that he doesn't have a good arm or anything. He may not be – maybe he's not as good as everyone thought he was, but he may not be also in a system that is right for him. You don't know that. Like, we don't know if that system's whatever it is right for him, right? So everyone can tell that you're forcing a round peg into a square hole, right? It's just not happening, and it's affecting him, right? Because so now he becomes essentially he's not going to have any chance to get drafted or anything like that if it continues.
Well, he'll still. The NFL's so dumb; he'll get drafted.
Well, he'll get picked up. Definitely.
6'5", 235 with a big arm. He's going to get drafted.
How could he get drafted?
You absolutely listen. Look at his. Okay, so first of all, here's the NFL. So his statistics. People don't watch enough film. He's got 18 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions this year, right? So that right there is like, okay, yeah, solid. He completes 65% of his passes. That's okay. He's got 373 yards rushing. Wow, he's mobile for a big guy. Someone's going to take him 3rd round. But here's my issue. The team lost confidence in this guy last year. Tony Elliott, who's now the head coach at UVA, had to dumb down the playbook so bad last year because this guy wasn't developing and because he was in his head and he was overthinking and he didn't have a clock in his head. Then they built up his belief a little bit this season. Like, the team started believing him a little bit until he became DJ again in the Syracuse game and sucked. Threw 2 interceptions, fumbled away a touchdown. And then it was like, oh, here we go again. And that's the mentality of a football team. You coach football, mentality is very, very important. If you don't believe in that guy and he's let you down over and over again, and then he shows some promise, but then he starts to do it again, you lose faith. You're like, oh, here we go again. And then the coaches get tighter. Here we go again. We got to dumb down the playbook. We got to make this smarter, and make it less thought for him. And then he starts thinking, oh, they've changed things. They don't believe in me. It's a snowball effect that nobody believes in this guy. And the false belief they had in him was because they were undefeated. And now nobody's undefeated. Nobody believes in him. Now you got a big problem. But NFL draft, listen, I mean, anybody who wanted to do their homework on Jamarcus Russell, who ended up being the number 1 pick in the draft by the Raiders, because he could throw the ball 85 yards, and because Al Davis was enamored with anybody who could throw the ball 85 yards in the air. The NFL's stupid. They're dumb. We've seen time and time again bad players get drafted, in not just the first round, but like in the top 3 rounds. So DJ will get drafted. Now, what I think should do, I think he should transfer, rehab his career someplace else. Like you said, he's from the West Coast. go out there, I don't know, play for Cal, Arizona State. You just pick the right coach, someone who can develop.
So someone who has – see, I think he needs to be in more of these like Mike Leach type offenses, like one of those offenses like on the West Coast where they kind of do – they run the same play over and over again just from multiple formations, and it's the same read progression over and over again, right? So, Mike Leach produces these guys that throw for 10 billion yards, but in the pros, they're very hit or miss. Most of the time are miss, right? He gets in one of those systems where it's like you do this, this, and this every single time. He probably would do. I think he would do well. Clemson, they were asking him to do regular read system. He was struggling with it. They went to almost like a no read system. Was kind of doing well, but now other teams know that and they come after you, and now he struggles. Right? That's all that happens. The defenses figure it out. And then they figure out what the thing is, and he struggles. I do this because I analyze for a high school team, and that's all that's all I look at because all I do is analysis, right? I just look and say, oh, this is all they're really trying to do. Boom, you do this, you'll stop them,
Yeah.
And if you have a smart guy in the analytical side, and college they do. And the NFL, they do, right? That's why you see Cam Newton go to Super Bowl one year, and all of a sudden, now he's the worst quarterback ever because they saw what stopped him in the Super Bowl, and then everybody just duplicated it, right? From that point forward. What Russell Wilson did when he went from NC State to Wisconsin, where he was good at NC State, but he went to Wisconsin, and to me, that was the difference maker in making him from a guy who maybe should have went and played baseball to a no doubt pro guy, right? That ended up being the right system at the right time for him. And he went from being a good player to, I don't know, he might've been a Big Ten player of the year that year or whatever.
Oh, he had a great season. Great season.
It made all the difference, right? Changed his career. So if Clemson hangs on the ukulele, I almost think that maybe you're doing him a disservice. Maybe he could go somewhere where there might be a guy that's a better fit and take the time to figure out who that person is. And he has a great senior year. And he, according to what you said, shoot, if he had a great senior year somewhere else, he might go in the first round with that size.
Maybe. I worry though, when you're talking about a fast hitting offense, and do you remember Jared Garantano?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay, so he was at Tennessee. He was a big failure at Tennessee. And he went out, I think it was Washington State, which is that type of offense, right?
Okay.
His clock never got better. No. I think DJ's clock's broken. I don't know if he'd be a fit in an offense like that where he has to make that quick decision. And it's not really a decision. It's like, okay, snap, there's my read. But he doesn't disguise anything. If you have that type of offense where, okay, it's a wide receiver screen and I'm snapping, I mean, they're going to pick you. I just don't know if he's rehabable at this point in a fast-paced offense or a slow offense or whatever. I think he should give it a try. I think he could be drafted middle of the draft right now based on his Clemson career, but he's going to be benched. Now, maybe he won't. I mean, maybe now – you've got these teams. You got Louisville and Miami and South Carolina, all winnable football games. You might stick with DJ. They might win the ACC title and just miss the playoff because they don't have any games that are going to move them up now. You're not moving up beating Louisville, Miami, or South Carolina. And whoever the ACC division winner that you're going to face is not going to be any good. I'm trying to look up the ACC. I can't even think of who the hell it is over there. North Carolina. Okay, so North Carolina's 8-1, and they're a 17th team in the country. Let's say they run the table, they finish like 11. You're still not going to move up. So there's no chance to make the playoff. It's pretty much done, unless a lot of crazy things happen in front of you. So he might stick with them. He might end up having a 26 touchdown, 5 interception year and get drafted. But at this point, it doesn't matter. I mean, it was clear that he was not the guy. It was clear in the Syracuse game. I wasn't there. I wasn't on the sidelines, but I watched the game. I could see the energy level of the team. It was rising when Cade Klubnik came in, and they didn't let him throw. But it didn't matter. Everybody started running faster, playing faster, because now they had belief. Now they had something to rally around and say, okay, now we're going to go get them. I see they're not eyes rolling. You can't really see it, but I see that look in players' eyes when DJ runs back on the field and they're down 2 touchdowns. There's this look of, here we go. And there's even that look in his eyes. There's no like fire. He's dead eyes. So, bad on Dabo for sticking with him. Klubnik's a 5-star talent. You probably should have, worked him into the rotation much earlier this season. Maybe you wouldn't have this issue.
Right.
Bad on Saban for the penalties and having to, I guess, stick with Golding as your defensive coordinator and stick with Bill O'Brien as your offensive coordinator, not make any coaching changes after last year. I said that both Golding and Bill O'Brien should be on the hot seat, if not fired, after last season. And people are like, you're crazy. We averaged this many points. Our defense was ranked this. We went to the national championship. I said to everybody who listened, yeah, but you lost. At Alabama, you don't lose. If you do lose, you get rid of the coaches and then you win. That's how it works. And he didn't make any changes. So I guess they're both getting what they deserve. And listen, we talk about the end of a dynasty. I mean, come on. Clemson's 8-1. Alabama's 7-2. They're both top 10 teams in the country. But neither of them's going to make the playoff this year, and that's just rare.
Yeah, I don't think it's too early to be the end of a dynasty, but it is. I just look at Nick Saban's reaction. All these, every Alabama game is on TV. It's amazing how popular he's made Alabama because we live in the East Coast, Northeast, and the game that's always on TV is Alabama, right? So, but he looked short-tempered, frustrated, annoyed, almost the whole entire game.
He looks like Tom Brady.
Tom Brady, by the way. Oh, you know what's interesting? It's interesting you brought that up. By the way, unbelievable. He could still do it if he has a chance. Tom Brady, the play they ran at the end of the game was almost the exact play that LSU ran to win the to make the 2-point conversion. The play Brady ran. If I wonder if I could find it.
What a horrible football game that was.
That was a horrible football game. But they ran the same tight end movement.
Yeah.
Quick flat play.
And the frustration I see from these great, the greatest coach ever in the NFL is Bill Belichick, and how frustrated is he? They won last weekend, but he's dealing with Mac Jones, he's dealing with a depleted roster, he's dealing with this, that, and the other. And then I see Nick Saban frustrated with all the penalties and the horrible discipline of his team. And I see Tom Brady frustrated, and I'm like, it just makes me think everything ends. Everything ends, and it was Tom Brady's he's thrown for 100,000 yards. 100,000 yards, I believe, was the number. Is that right? Do you?
How many yards is Brady thrown for?
Yeah, he just set the record. I'm just trying to see if it's in the game cast that he just played. I just want to see if they mention it. I'm pretty sure that was the number.
Yeah, he has over 100,000. Yep.
Yeah, okay, so think of that. You have to throw 5,000 yards a year for 20 years. 20 years to do that. I mean, these guys are phenomenal, amazing coaches and players, and they're all dealing with the same thing: frustration, because nothing lasts forever. The Bucks are 4-5 and they lead their division, but they're going nowhere. If they make the playoffs, they're going to get killed. That team's horrible to watch. The offensive line sucks. Mike Evans sucks. That dude dropped so many passes last night.
What happened to Mike Evans?
I don't know. I think he just, hit a wall.
He's getting old. He's getting older, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, but they looked awful. Alabama doesn't look like the same team. And Brian Kelly knew he had that team in the 2-point conversion. He knew they were winded. They were dead. He's like, I'm going for 2 now because we're going to get it. There's no way they can stop us. And it's never been said about an Alabama team ever under Saban. And then Belichick with the freaking Patriots. So it's kind of like a changing of the guard is what I'm seeing here. Kirby and Georgia are the new Alabama. I'm not sure who the new ACC team for Clemson is going to be. There's nobody really emerging for that. But But yeah, time changes everything.
What do you think about these two moves before we go? So Kirby Smart obviously goes to Georgia. And then isn't Cochran the guy who was a strength and conditioning coach? Yep. He's a special teams coordinator? Or
yeah, he went over from Georgia to Alabama. So, from Alabama to Georgia, sorry.
Do you think that, those and I'm sure there are other assistants that we don't know about, other guys that, are role players as coaches there that Kirby may have taken too with him. But I think the impact of Kirby Smart and then Cochran leaving almost immediately after that, because it was a huge, huge impact, along with the rotating offensive, which is obviously Saban's model right now, because he's like, I'll just get another guy in. The rotating coordinator model, which worked for a time period. But look, the other thing is Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien deserves all the credit for what he did at Penn State. There's no doubt about it. He literally probably saved the program from going 10 years into the land of hell by keeping it together. Okay. But since then, he has been horrendous. He has been horrendous at the Texans. He has not done anything phenomenal. Okay. No. So I always say, there are guys that do some great things at one point, in their career, and then go in a different place or a different time, and it's not the right fit or it doesn't, whatever. He did great at Penn State. Let's realize that is a long time ago now. He is not doing anything great anymore. He doesn't run any. He's not innovative. You could say what you want about Lane Kiffin, but Lane Kiffin knows how to coach offense. You can say what you want about Sarkisian. He knows how to coach offense. Do they have their personality quirks? That's why they were rehabbing at Sabanville. Okay. But not because they weren't great at what they did. They were already great at what they did as far as offensively. You were just plugging in a really great mind into a system that had a great system. Bill O'Brien is okay relative. I mean, would you say that he's the same level as Kiffin or Sarkisian?
No, not as an offensive play caller. And defensively, to your point about Kirby Smart, I mean, Jeremy Pruitt replaced him. He went to Tennessee. Then Tosh Lupoy replaced him. He's at Oregon now, but he went to the NFL. And then there's been Golding. And Golding has been there since 2018, and it's been a drop off. So you go from Kirby to Pruitt, which is a drop off, from Pruitt to Tosh, which I don't think was a drop off. I think a lateral move, and then Golding has been bad. It's been bad, and I think Saban's been calling more of that defense himself. And the difference I see between Georgia and Alabama is defensively, the way to stop Tennessee, we've learned now, is to let your corners do their job and let your defensive backs do their job. Play up on them, play press, and that allows you to blitz because you don't have to keep bodies back. And they were extremely aggressive. And that's what Nick Saban was always able to do with his defense. He had great defensive backs. They were able to play up and press, and it allowed him to come up with a bunch of different pass rushing schemes where he didn't have to drop extra guys. Now their D-backs are not good. I mean, they're good. Elias Ricks is okay. They've got some guys back there that are okay, but not the same level. And then that's why they couldn't stop Tennessee at all, because they couldn't play press. And that's why Georgia can. So Kirby's been a problem. Him leaving has been a problem for Alabama ever since. And now you've got the play calling diminishment from Kiffin to Sarkisian, which was even down to Bill O'Brien. It's a bit of a mess. And again, they're still 7-2. But Bryce Young overcame a lot of these issues himself just by the way he plays. And they're just a more talented team since some of the teams they play. But when they're not more talented, and they got a better coach on the other side of things, and Brian Kelly's a great coach, there's no question.
No question about it.
Then you got yourselves a little bit of a problem. So, Clemson, Alabama, out of the playoff this year. Maybe some new dynasty will emerge. Georgia's starting to look that way. And maybe we can start seeing some of these teams like Tennessee, or maybe a Florida or maybe a Texas. That was a big win for them this weekend against Kansas State. Start to emerge back up and we get more parity in college football. I think it's all good. It's 107, though. We got to get out of here.
Yeah, let's roll. Check out myfootballcamps.com. And we'll be glad to help you go through that recruiting process, get that video for you, and give you the opportunity to get looked at. And if you're 2023, you're going to have to really get on it, because otherwise soon we're going to say, hey, listen, we're only going to take it 2024s, because we're not going to have customers that are like, hey, I didn't get anything after I did the video. Well, if we wait too long, it just becomes the end of time.
Yeah, I think the drop off for that is probably over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I think it'd be December 1st or so. I mean, you still have. So listen, if you're 2023, maybe not December 1st, because we can help you FCS wise. Because as you know, early signing period, late signing period, FCS recruits later than that. Usually it was after February. Now it's much more after December. We can help you. But if you got this FBS dream, man, I mean, you got 3 weeks and we can help you. But beyond that, we're going to be straight with you and say, listen, FCS is the best we could shoot for at this point in time. So myfootballcamps.com/D1, DM us. We'll always respond to you. And I'll talk to you next week.
You 100% absolutely will. And we'll get signed off. And we'll see you all next week.